What is up, everyone? My name is James McCool. I am the owner of Paydirt DFS.com, and today we are going to be going over the what should have been Saturday stream for NFL Week 12. My internet decided to be really annoying and shitty today, so I'm just going to be doing a shorter form video today without the live stream format. I'm going to be going over the same process that I go over every week on Saturday stream, though, which is going to be considerably shorter because I'm not going to be bantering or anything like that. I'm going to try to get through it relatively quickly. So apologies for those that usually tune in to the Saturday stream. It's a lot of fun, but I have my wine. This is actually a really shitty wine. I had to put some French vanilla syrup in it to make it drinkable because it is just acrid as fuck. It's really bad. But that's okay. We're still going to drink it because we're a man, and we get through our drinks. So if you don't usually turn into the Saturday stream or watch these videos, one, you should do both of those things. But two, what we usually do is we'll go over the macro concepts first, right? We'll look at team totals, game environments, projected touchdowns, all that kind of stuff. We'll kind of get an idea of where we want to go based on that kind of stuff without ever looking at the player projection things. And then we're going to look at stacks. Then we're going to look at individual projections for each position, see what sticks out. And then finally, we're going to look at the stack finder, and we're going to figure out the best stacks to use tomorrow. Then I'll go over some chalk talk. We'll see if there's anything that we absolutely do not want any piece of on this slate, and things that we might want to lock down. As always, there will also be an accompanying article tomorrow, the thoughts and notes, that shows up over at paydirtdfs.com, which obviously is my site. If you're a subscriber, you'll have access to that as well. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump in. I have the macro data loaded up here. You can find the macro data in the research models. It's the first page that pops up. But we'll go ahead and close up on the screen here and zoom this out. So obviously, Dallas had the largest team total, and they surpassed that on Thanksgiving. Detroit was next. The highest team total on this slate is actually just Kansas City at 26.75. The game total is not incredible there either. They are pretty significant favorites. Las Vegas is only implied to score, looks like 17 real-life points, something like that, without even seeing them down here. Yep, 16.75, so that's pretty bad, but Kansas City has a pretty good team total, and their passing touchdown expectation is pretty high at 1.92. Philadelphia is up here, 25.75. They have a good game environment up against Buffalo. I believe that it is the highest on the slate, actually, with a game total of 48.5. Both of those teams are competent and have good weapons and can score at will when Buffalo is feeling, like Buffalo should. And then next up, we have Miami was 25.5 over the Jets. Obviously, the Jets just suck dick. San Francisco is 25 over Seattle. Seattle sucks dick. And then we have this Jacksonville-Houston game, which I think people are going to probably be all over. Is that on the main slate? Houston-Jacksonville? Yeah, that's on the main slate. So I'll be referring to this as well. I'm looking at ownership stuff here, but Jacksonville-Houston, I think, is going to be one of the higher-owned games. If we sort by game total here, we have this Buffalo-Philadelphia game at 48.5. We have the Chargers in Baltimore at 48, and then we have Houston-Jacksonville at 47.5. And then after that, Green Bay-Detroit was at 47, and Arizona, the Rams at 45. That one starts, we're falling down a little bit farther. Tampa Bay, Indiana. I've heard some people being really into Indiana. If we look at the highest owned player, it's projecting to be Jonathan Taylor. And that makes sense. His utility has been pretty good. His expected fantasy points have been fine. He's only $6,900, so that's a very nice price for somebody like Jonathan Taylor. As we continue to go down the list, Las Vegas, Kansas City. Again, this game is lopsided, but, Kansas City, they should put up points. Keyword there, should. Kansas City's offense has not been terrific. And then as we continue going down, I'm pretty sure Chicago, Minnesota is actually not on the main slate. Go to, let's see. Yeah, that is not on the main slate. So it's another game that team total is actually not too bad, but it's not going to be there. Overall, not that many very good game totals. Really, it's just Buffalo, Philadelphia, Houston, Jacksonville. People are really going to be focused on these two games for the most part. As far as passing touchdown expectations, the highest on this slate is Kansas City at 1.92, followed closely by Buffalo at 1.84, and then a drop down all the way to 1.64 for the Rams and 1.62 for Houston. Again, not really that high, but these two really lead the pack. As far as rushing touchdown expectation, the highest goes to Philadelphia at 1.44. Is Baltimore on the slate? Doesn't look like Baltimore's on this slate either. I didn't think so. So yeah, Philadelphia at 1.44. And then Indianapolis at 1.11 is the next highest. So Philadelphia, just a huge, huge advantage over the rest of the field. And I don't think that DeAndre Swift is going to be that highly owned. Now, granted, all of the rushing work does not go to DeAndre Swift, right? Like, as far as touchdowns go, a pretty significant portion of those go to Jalen Hurts. So when you see that, most people are going to say, oh, well, Jalen Hurts, tush push, whatever. And they would be right, but with how Philadelphia calls plays, 1.44 rushing touchdown expectation, you should have interest in DeAndre Swift. Like, it's a high total game and a good game environment that should score touchdowns. You should have interest in DeAndre Swift, especially if it gives you some leverage off the field in terms of Philadelphia or Buffalo stacks. So keep that in mind. Looking at dropback expectation, Washington was by far the highest, and I believe that they were the highest. And after that, it's going to be Kansas City at 39.2, then Buffalo, Carolina 38.71. Carolina has had a really good dropback expectation all year, but Bryce Young just sucks so bad that he can't make anything happen with it. So after that, it's a pretty considerable drop. The best spots here in terms of volume are just going to be Kansas City and Buffalo. So that's kind of the story of this slate, really. As far as designed rushing attempts, Atlanta is the top at 28.6, followed by Cleveland at 27.45, and then Philadelphia at 26.15. Pittsburgh at 25.91. I think people are going to have interest in Jaylen Warren, and I don't think that's the worst idea, but I'm not in love with it either. Let's go ahead and check out the main slate passing stacks. So typically, what we're trying to do here, again, if you have not tuned into the Saturday stream, so you just want to see where medians are lying, we want to see where value lies, and we want to be able to compare the salary of the stacks against the team totals, and the medians against team totals as well, ownership, all that kind of stuff. I added in the team totals a couple weeks ago, and it's been really, really nice for research. I don't have to cross-reference anything, and I suggest that everybody else do that as well. So overall, the highest medians are going to be Buffalo and Philadelphia. Again, no shit. They have the highest overall game total on the slate, 48.5, followed by the Rams at 48, and Kansas City, and then Houston at 47. Things start to drop a bit after you get past those. Indianapolis at 42.53 is the next team that has a team total even worth mentioning, and then Arizona at 40. So medians drop off pretty quickly. That being said, the prices up here for these top stacks are justified, right? Let's go ahead and sort by totals here. So when we sort by totals, Kansas City, most expensive stack, Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce at nearly 22,000. And then for 1 point lower in team total, we have Philadelphia, who costs almost $3,000 more. You're almost paying $25,000 for Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown, and Devontae Smith stack. I don't know if you can justify doing that. Dedicating nearly half of your salary to a stack, especially when there is really not that much good value, that's going to be rough. And the ownership is relatively high, but I just don't think that people are going to be able to make it happen. I think much more likely you're going to see Jacksonville, 24.5 team total, not a single salary over 20K. People are going to be all over this. Like, this is the stack, and you can see it in the ownership, right? I'll take the over on this as well as a combined stack ownership. This is going to be the stack that people go after. Next up, we have the Rams, who have two stacks that are well under 20K, and then we have the Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp stack, which people aren't going to be on, but they probably should be, so long as Cooper Kupp is healthy. Then after that, we have dumpster diving here in terms of price with Indianapolis, 23.5 team total. People really like attacking Green Bay. I do think that this Indianapolis stack will have some ownership. The interesting thing worth mentioning, obviously, is that we're going to see in a sec, but Jonathan Taylor projects as the highest owned running back on the slate. So it's one of those situations where both of those things will be highly owned, and you can actually play one or the other without having to worry too much about leverage because you are directly leveraging one of the other higher owned pieces on the slate, right? If you play an Indianapolis stack, sure, it might be relatively highly owned, but you're getting direct leverage on Jonathan Taylor. If you play Jonathan Taylor, sure, he's highly owned, but you get direct leverage on the Indianapolis stacks. So worth noting that there is direct leverage to be had on either side there. After that, Houston, 23 team total, but pretty expensive. Buffalo, 23 team total, but pretty expensive. And then New Orleans. New Orleans is cheap as fuck, and their team total is 21.5. I don't necessarily think that they are way underpriced, but I do think they're appropriately priced, and their ownership is not going to show that. So we're going to see some really good leverage scores on New Orleans. Let's sort by 4x here, just to kind of get a grasp of values. New England looks like the best value overall. I don't want to fucking play Mac Jones, and I won't, but he looks like pretty decent value. He does look like he's getting some ownership too. I think a lot of that is coming from Demario Douglas, but New England stacks look relatively good. Buffalo stacks, 4x looks great here with Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, and Dalton Kincaid. It is expensive, but when we look at the salary expectation, I think that more people are likely going to take the Philadelphia side, mostly because they think that A.J. Brown is a better play than Stephon Diggs. So that's kind of what this is. Are people going to play A.J. Brown, or are they going to play Stephon Diggs? And I think that Stephon Diggs will come in lower. Again, I haven't looked at ownership stuff yet, so I don't know if that's true or if that's the consensus thought. But the Buffalo stack here for nearly $2,200 less, projecting a bit more, this is a really, really good stack. We're into Buffalo stacks. Sort by 4x one more time, take a look at some things. Atlanta, I'm not really about that. Indianapolis, okay, that's fine with Pittman and Downs. Downs has been really, really fucking good, by the way. If you don't follow Josh Harmon, you should. Josh Harmon is, or Matt Harmon, sorry, not Josh Harmon. Matt Harmon, he does reception perception over on Twitter. You should follow him. He's really, really good. He's all about Josh Downs. Josh Downs has been one of the best receivers in the league by his charting, and I'm all about that. So I don't know if I'm super into Indianapolis stacks, but I really do like Josh Downs in this spot. Then after that, New England, Arizona, Indianapolis, Arizona, and then Jacksonville. This Jacksonville stack of Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram is going to be really, really highly owned. And this Houston stack of Tank Dell and Nico Collins is also going to be really highly owned. So that's pretty much what we've got for stacks. Overall, after looking at this, I think that Buffalo and Philadelphia obviously stick out, highest medians. I like the Buffalo side more. I'm hoping that is the lower owned side, but we'll see come lock. And then after that, Kansas City and Houston look like kind of the other options, right? It's a lot of Buffalo stacks, one Philadelphia stack, and then Houston and Kansas City stacks. So that's kind of where we're at this point. Let's go ahead and take a look at some individual projection ownerships. So as far as quarterbacks go, highest projected ownership at quarterback is Trevor Lawrence and then Gardner Minshew. Both those things make sense. I think that will absolutely hold true, and I absolutely think that Josh Allen will be about 5% owned. So people do not want to pay up for quarterback this week. I think that Patrick Mahomes will come in at like 3% owned. I do not think that he is going to have as much ownership as Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts. Kansas City stacks look like the nuts. As far as running backs, let's sort this by ownership. Jonathan Taylor, like I said, looks like the highest owned, especially by projection. And then Isaiah Pacheco, this one makes sense. As a large favorite against a team that kind of sucks with Las Vegas. That looks like a pretty decent spot. And then Javonte Williams, only 5,700. James Conner, only 5,900. And then Rachaad White. It's always weird when you have Jonathan Taylor or when you have two running backs that are opposing each other, projecting as heavy chalk, especially when it comes to running backs that are volume guys. That said, Rachaad White, his price has just not come up enough at all this year. He's been really, really solid. His workload has been one of the best in the league. And Jonathan Taylor, obviously, his workload has been moving up and up and up, and this is a really good matchup. So most of this chalk makes sense. And then we have Derrick Henry at 6,400 up against Carolina. Now, look, I think Carolina's really, really bad. But I don't think that Derrick Henry is only going to be 15% owned. I think that he's going to get shoved up like above Isaiah Pacheco. I think he probably comes in at like 20% owned, second highest owned running back on the slate. If the ownership is trending down, I really like Derrick Henry, but I don't really want to take a shot on Derrick Henry if he's going to be chalk. I'm just not about that. Let's go ahead and take a look at some wide receiver ownership. Tank Dell, highest projected owned. Sure, fine. He's getting expensive, though. Him and Nico Collins are expensive. Demario Douglas, only 4,400. He's going to be the main value this week. Him and fucking George Pickens, I guess. George Pickens should not be... Don't fucking play George Pickens. Like, early contender for don't fucking touch this guy. His route tree fucking sucks with Deontay Johnson back. Like, do not touch George Pickens this week. I hope he ends up being 20% owned. Christian Kirk, Calvin Ridley, sure, fine, I get that. A lot of this ownership looks fine. I'm not seeing anything that I'm, like, super off of here. I mean, I'm not touching Justin Watson. But, like, yeah, all this ownership looks fine. Just don't touch fucking George Pickens, and you're fine. Let's look at ownership at tight ends. Trey McBride continuing to get the vast majority of the ownership. He didn't do well last week. I don't think he should be 20% owned. 4,700 is probably appropriately priced for him. And then Evan Ingram, Dalton Kincaid. Dalton Kincaid is obviously my favorite in this range. Really like Buffalo. If Travis Kelce is going to come in at 10% owned, he sucked last week because he was on a bye week, and he was like following fucking Taylor Swift on tour. Of course he was hungover, and of course he was tired. Like, he's going to come out and he's going to fuck up Las Vegas in this slate. If Travis Kelce is only going to be 8% owned, I mean, you just start there, I think. You just start with Kansas City stacks. So far, just play Kansas City stacks, right? Like, just start with Mahomes and Travis Kelce, who's going to put up one of those 11 receptions for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns games, showing off, like, after having a bad week last week. Just Kansas City stacks look awesome right now. And then David Njoku, most of the ownership here just doesn't matter. But these three guys, Trey McBride is overowned. He's appropriately priced now. This isn't like a $3,500 tight end anymore. Like, you have to pay for him. That's too much ownership. Give me all the Travis Kelce if he's going to be under 10% owned. All right, so what have we learned? Ownership so far looks mostly right outside of George Pickens. I'm fine with Jonathan Taylor. I think that Derrick Henry is going to end up the second highest owned running back. I'm fine with Isaiah Pacheco. Like, a lot of the ownership makes sense. The only plays that I think, from an ownership standpoint, that we really don't want, George Pickens, don't fucking play chalk George Pickens. That is the worst idea that you could possibly have. And I think that what people are going to say is like, oh, Matt Canada's fired. Kenny Pickett is the worst. Like, he's really, really bad. He's not as bad as Zach Wilson. But he's probably like Daniel Jones bad, right? Like, he's bad. So I'm not playing Kenny Pickens. And then Trey McBride is a little bit overowned. Players who are way underowned, Travis Kelce, mostly. I think that Travis Kelce, and I think Kansas City stacks overall look way underowned. I think Patrick Mahomes is going to be like 2%. I think Travis Kelce is going to be like 5% or something. I'm all about that. I don't even think you have to have a bring back, right? You can just do like Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce. You can add Rashee Rice if you want, but they're going to pass for touchdowns. And Patrick Mahomes can get there even without a whole bunch of guys. So let's go ahead and jump into the Stack Finder. This is the last thing that we'll do, and then we'll talk a little bit about closing out the slate. So let's go ahead and run some QB plus 2s. We're going to run it with $50,000 salary just because, we just want to make sure that we get everything. Let's see. So the top overall is Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. That's fine. And then we have Buffalo, the Rams, and then Kansas City. Just a whole lot of Kansas City all up in here. And then New Orleans, and then Denver. Denver stacks are really interesting because Russell Wilson has been good this year, and people are just not paying attention to it. His numbers have been basically identical to when he was playing in Seattle, when people were all about him. So, I mean, you can do worse. And then after that, Carolina stacks. I'm not going to touch Carolina stacks, but Adam Thielen probably going to have way too low of ownership. I mean, we didn't even see him in the top overall ownership here, did we? No, I mean, you got to drop. And Adam Thielen, like, he still projects good. If we sort by median, he still projects way up here, and he's going to be 3% owned. Like, we just get back on Adam Thielen, probably. But overall, Philadelphia, Buffalo, and then a lot of Kansas City. If we go QB +1 stacks, Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown. So Philadelphia, Buffalo, Kansas City, Rams, Houston, Kansas City. And then we drop way, way, way down in ownership. But overall, man, this Thielen, Bryce Young, this projects the same as Patrick Mahomes, Rashee Rice. It only projects for 2 points less than C.J. Stroud, Dalton Schultz, and that's going to have some more ownership. So I think overall, you could do worse than playing Adam Thielen this week. I think he's a great option. Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, like, that's just the nuts. Projects for 37. It's relatively expensive, but it's going to have, I think it comes in at less than 10% ownership. And then the two big boy stacks, Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs. Worth noting that the only Houston stack showing up here is C.J. Stroud and Dalton Schultz. Like, you're very likely not going to get a stack that projects well enough for the ownership for Houston outside of using Dalton Schultz. There's just going to be too much ownership on it. And I said that last week, and again, in the article, I didn't say to fade Houston. I didn't think fading Houston was right, but you had to be understanding of and reticent of the ownership that you were eating with Houston stacks, and I thought that it was a really good idea to get different with the pieces that you had, like fade, Tank Dell, and Trey McBride. Like, don't have that combination. Have one of Tank Dell or Trey McBride. Have one of, Marquise Brown or Nico Collins, stuff like that. And I think that's just the same thing this week. Like, if you're going to play Houston stacks, I think that it's probably better to play Dalton Schultz. I think it's better to play Nico Collins. I think that it's better to play, Noah Brown if he's in. If he's out, then it's better to play Robert Woods. Like, that combo of Stroud and Tank Dell is just going to be really, really highly owned. And there are players that just project better straight up, like from a straight up standpoint. So, overall, looking at this, Philadelphia, Buffalo, Kansas City, and the Rams look like the best overall stacks that we can focus on this week. Yeah, Philadelphia, Buffalo, the Rams, Kansas City. All right, let's close this out. I said it was going to be a shorter one this week, so maybe you guys will like this format more, me doing a little bit of a shorter kind of like lightning round. But things that we really like in terms of stacks. We really like Philadelphia and Buffalo. It's a great game environment. We love Kansas City stacks. Kansas City stacks look awesome, especially if you just go Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce. Fucking great. You don't even have to have a bring back if you don't want, but you can go Devontae Adams, obviously, if you need to. After that, we are fine with a Rams stack. Rams with Arizona bring back if you want. If you stack the Rams, that's where you play Trey McBride. Trey McBride is overowned. He's appropriately priced. But if you stack the Rams, like, you get enough of the correlation boost and enough of the leverage boost that you can still play him. Or if you play an Arizona stack with an overstack, right? If you do, like, Kyler Murray plus Trey McBride plus Marquise Brown and then bring it back with Puka Nacua and I don't know. I don't think you'll be able to fit Cooper Kupp in that stack. Maybe you will. But if you do an overstack and get like 5-6 pieces out of that game, that's fine too. But Trey McBride, I don't think you should be playing Trey McBride this week as a one-off. I think that he's really only reserved for game stacks. The other guy that you fade this week is just George Pickens. If George Pickens is going to be highly owned, you just fade the fuck out of George Pickens. Fade the Pittsburgh offense. There might be optimism there, and I get it, but I think Kenny Pickett's bad. I don't think I've seen anything from him that makes him look good. Players that look under-owned. Travis Kelce and Adam Thielen by a lot. I think both those guys are going to be like 5% owned, and both those guys have legit 12, 13, 14 target upside. People are going to want to play Derrick Henry. What you should do is you should play Derrick Henry with Adam Thielen. You should make those correlation stacks because that sounds like the nuts. You should make like Travis Kelce and Devontae Adams stacks. That sounds like the nuts. That sounds great. Those are just going to be way too low owned, I think. And then my one other big lean here is just going to be Buffalo over Philadelphia. I think if Buffalo feels renewed after winning a game, after firing Ken Dorsey, like that team was reeling. They are at risk of missing the playoffs. I think they have more to play for. I think that Stephon Diggs is due for like a significantly large game. You know, we saw Shakir get there last week. I think that Stephon Diggs and Dalton Kincaid makes for a terrific stack this week. So I prefer them, and a bring back of Devontae Smith, you know, a fade of AJ Brown, I think makes a lot of sense here. So that's going to be most of my thoughts here. It looks like a pretty good slate. I think that the chalk looks pretty good. I don't mind Jonathan Taylor. I don't mind Derrick Henry. I don't mind, you know, a lot of the chalk. Just don't play George Pickens, and only play Trey McBride in game stacks or full stacks, right? It should be a week where you just lock in a lower owned stack and surround it with chalk, or lock in a Buffalo stack and, you know, figure out some guys that are under owned like Adam Thielen and Travis Kelce, and maybe some running backs that are a little bit lower owned. I guess I could give some thoughts on some running backs that are a little bit lower owned here. Alvin Kamara looks way too low owned. DeAndre Swift, I mentioned him. DeAndre Swift as part of a Buffalo stack probably doesn't make too much sense, but should be under owned. Jalen Warren only projecting for 5% owned. Joe Mixon only projecting for 5% owned. Najee Harris 1%. I mean, there's a lot of running backs that you can take some shots on here at low ownership if you're going to be stacking up that Buffalo-Philadelphia game. So if you have questions, feel free to come reach out on Twitter at Paydirt_DFS, or join the free Discord for Paydirt. I obviously think that anything that you can do with Paydirt DFS is the right way to move. And if you have not checked out Paydirt DFS, you should do that. Here comes my plug. If you want to turn off the video now, then you can be a dick about it if you want. But if you don't want to, then you can see the subscription options. NBA, $35 a month. All access. This is every single sport and esport, $40 a month. And then NFL only is $35. I'm going to be dropping the price of NBA only and NBA yearly here pretty soon. So these are going to go down a little bit. And then if you just want to get a weekly or a daily pass, you can do that too. It's totally fine. I just appreciate all the support. I appreciate everybody who tunes in and reads my stuff and uses the models. Y'all are the reason why I can keep doing this. So thanks so much. I appreciate all of you. I hope that we can crush out this NFL slate. And I will see you at the top of leaderboards.